Thanks. So I'm standing between you and lunch. You are brave people. By applause, who feels like they have enough energy for another 30 minutes talk by an old guy? Thank you. Who thinks simplicity is important in software? Good. Great audience. Who thinks simplicity is very important in software? Okay. So I'll try to help you convince others of that because, I know you're good, but what about the others? My name is Bertrand Delacretaz. Je viens de la Suisse romande, as you might maybe hear. It's good to cross the Röstigrabe sometimes. I recommend it. And this talk is about simplicity, and I'll expose my view of simplicity, my vision. I think it's a vision. I'm pretty motivated about it. I'll show a few examples which might have been created as some of you were not even born, but we've been doing software. I've been doing software for a long time. And then we'll talk about the challenges, how you get there, because, theory is nice. We need to have some practice as well. So these are the three chapters. Beautiful simplicity, the beauty of simplicity, which I'll try to convey, examples, and how do we do it. Beautiful simplicity, this example will not be surprising. Who is a fan of Lego? Great. I've always been a fan of Lego, but always with the basic bricks. Lego has these very complex boxes where you need to follow the instructions. I don't care about that. I'm too lazy. I like to have a big, bag of bricks with my kids. Now it's with our grandson, and improvise, invent crazy things, create a space shuttle that doesn't look like a space shuttle at all, but it is a space shuttle. And I love the simplicity of having just 4 basic bricks, 2 plates maybe, and that's it, and do something with it. So that's my angle on Lego. I don't, there's a space for other types of Lego, but that's my brand of Lego, based, firmly rooted in simplicity. We're in Switzerland, so of course it's easy to, this example is not surprising either, the Swiss Army knife. But have you seen the crazy ones? The one that's that wide, has 124 tools, 122 of them don't serve any purpose except looking cool in the store. So I like this type of Swiss Army knife, this very simple one, where there's probably nothing to remove. You could argue, do you really need a small blade and large blade? Yes, sometimes you do, depends on your use cases. But I love the simple Swiss Army knife, and I'm very wary about the complex one. And I think you can see parallels with software already, hopefully. The kazoo. I'm also a musician. Someone was asking Dorothea how you become good on stage. By being on stage. Go on stage, sign up for Ignites, speak to your community, speak in your village about things, do theater, whatever. So my thing is to do music. And the kazoo is a super simple instrument. It might be the simplest melodic instrument in the world. It's just a resonator. You'll hear that in a few minutes. And but the original kazoo, this is one of the typical basic kazoo. And this, I think, the design of this goes back to the 1930s. And we're in 2025. So why stick with that? So about a little bit more than a year ago, because in our band, I was talking about the Röstigrabe, the guitar player moved to Appenzell, and we based in Yverdon. It's too far, so we don't have a guitar player anymore. No more guitar solo. So we said, hey, we'll play the kazoo. But this is not the best sound in the world. I'll play a tune that's very appropriate. We have a new federal councillor since yesterday. We knew the name was going to start with a mar and end with a ter. We don't know which one it was going to be. It was a surprise. So I'll play a tune. And if you consider, okay, that's a super simple instrument, it's simplistic, so maybe I should play it simplistic. Not bad, but if you want to, thank you. If you want if you want to replace a guitar player who moved to Apitzer, you need something better. So I said, can we design a kazoo that sounds better? A concert kazoo. 3 membranes, and you will hear that it sounds better. Better. Thank you. So you hadn't come here to hear me play kazoo, but, or maybe you did. My point is that it's good to be simple, but you should not be simplistic. This is 2025. Why should we stay with the design of a kazoo that was created in 1930? It's cool from a historic point of view. I lost my clicker now. But, oh, here, thank you. It's good to have an audience. You know, my point is that it's good to be simple, but you should not be simplistic. Take advantage of the new technology, of LLMs, whatever, but keep it simple. And that's a big challenge. I like this story. You know, you probably heard it. The Americans spent $20 million creating a pen that works in space. The Russians, they used a pencil. It's funny, but there's more to it. Can you imagine what the pencil can do in a space shuttle? Floating particles of graphite in the electronics and stuff. It's not that fantastic. So it's a fun story, but the pencil is probably too simplistic, and we have to find that balance. Another question that's important today in terms of simplicity, especially if we talk about AI, I have to talk about AI, today. So this is my slide about AI. How much power do you need? You know, there was the DeepL. No, is that DeepSeek? I forgot the name. The Chinese thing. DeepSeek, sorry. Announcement recently, and the big difference is that you can do the same thing with 10 times or 100 times less power. And that's super important. And that comes from the simplicity. That comes from maybe taking a few engineering shortcuts to get there. This thing it does a very complicated job, but we're clever engineers, so maybe you can find some shortcuts, smoke and mirrors, and it still works, but with less power. So I think simplicity can lead to that. Dorothea in her talk was talking about consequences having consequences. And I think simplicity can have really important consequences of what you are doing in software. We'll see that in the examples. So my vision of simplicity is that it's beautiful, it's splendid, it can be very efficient or can help your systems be efficient, but it needs to be appropriate. You need to find the right level of simplicity between something that's really too simple and doesn't do the job, and something that just good enough to do the job, do it very reliably, in a very stable way. And I think the examples between the rockets, the power, and the kazoo help us maybe, hopefully, that's what we're here for, get this picture. On to the examples. I was super happy to see that there's a booth from the Bundesamt für Informatik, ist das? Because one of the examples is related to that. Well, it's not the first one. Second one. But this is also for a project that I did for a Swiss company doing ice early warning systems. So road management, in winter in Switzerland, when you need to put salt on the roads to de-ice them, this company helps the public administration optimize that by measuring the actual freezing point on the roads and telling them if they need to go out or not. And I did for them. We did the whole data acquisition system back in 1993. That was when I was saying maybe some of you were not born. We had But what's interesting in that date is that the resources were very limited. We were working. The systems we had were PCs, IBM PC compatible systems. I think it was Pentium 386 at the time, very limited, not much memory. I remember installing SCO Unix from diskettes, 80 diskettes. You play disk jockey for 2 hours on the system, but then you have a very reliable system with Unix. So the resources were expensive at the time. And we had to store data produced by the weather stations. Hundreds of, maybe, in the hundreds, 200, 300 weather stations, like we did the whole of Bayern at the time installation, freeways and roads and stuff. So you have these stations spitting out meteorological data every 2 minutes. It's not big. It's like, one line of characters every 2 minutes. But you need to store it all the time from all the stations. It has to be very reliable. You don't want to lose that data. And then you have to do some queries. Pretty simple. Give me the data for this region between these times, T1, T2, and that's it. First idea, of course, database. To use a database, and then you can do queries, and that's great. And okay, stick a database. But the customers did not pay for these systems. They would pay for the weather stations, and the systems were, provided as an add-on, but free as part of the global price. So it shouldn't be too expensive, and especially it should be super robust and simple. And we search. How can we do that? We started with a database, and we said, no, that's too complicated. I'm sure we can make it simpler. And we did make it simple. In the end, what we ended up is just a hierarchical folder structure, chronological. So you have one folder per year. Then in a folder, you have 12 folders per month. Then in the month folder, you have 31 folders. Some months don't have 31 days. Who cares? And then in the daily folders, you put small files, which represent a small amount of time, maybe 10 minutes of data, 15 minutes of data. And then when you want to do a query, you compute the path based on the time T1 of the query. You go in, you retrieve the file, and maybe you have to filter it out a bit because there's too much data. But that's really efficient. It's super stable. It's super simple. I can explain to you in 30 seconds. And it's really easy to manage. The customer wants to erase data from 2008. Okay, delete the folder, done. What I mean is that when the system is that simple, it's obvious. You can explain it to a colleague over coffee. You can explain it even to someone who's not very deep in tech. Show this picture. Yeah, you see there's data here. Okay, I understand. Fine, done. And I think that's a very important criterion. When you reach the good level of simplicity, it's often pretty obvious, or it's simple to explain, and that's very key. So, and then this was in 1999. Who has ever read the Amtliches Bulletin, or Bulletin Officiel of the Chamber? Okay. I don't read it every day either, but it's a very important part of our political system. Everything that happens in the chambers has to be recorded, transcribed, published. And in 1999, we did a system to publish that on the web, starting from digital recording, which was not trivial in 1999. Today, that would be a piece of cake. So we had to do continuous audio recording of the sessions of the chambers. So we said, we'll do recording for 3 weeks uninterrupted, so we don't forget to turn it on again. Easier. And we didn't accept losing more than 15 seconds of audio, whatever happens. If you have reliable drives, the design prevents the system from losing more than 15 seconds. And at the time, the two providers that I remember were Microsoft had a system, forgot the name, they always change the names anyway, so Microsoft had something to do digital audio recording, and there was Real Audio, which was popular at the time. Who remembers Real Audio? Yeah, you're telling your age. And these folks were, so we said, okay, we want to do digital audio recording, only three channels, so not a problem. But the design must prevent losing more than 15 seconds. And we didn't get clear answers. Yeah, maybe okay. So if you lose a file, if it's corrupted, we have tools to repair them. We said no, that doesn't work. We want a design that makes it impossible to lose more than 15 seconds of audio. And we worked on this, and we work on this. The good thing was for the Swiss Parliament, they work in cycles of 4 years, legislature, don't know the name in English. And so if the system we designed lasted 4 years, they were not happy. If it lasted 8 years, that's not bad. If it lasted 12 years, they started getting happy. And if it lasted 16 years, they were super happy. They might still even be using it. But at least I know it lasted at least 15 to 20 years. So we're super happy. Meaning we did have budget to do something good. They were not saying make it super cheap. They were saying make it good, and we'll give you some resources to do that. And that's super useful because we spent about 3 months working on that, and the result was about 86 lines of code. When you come up with the invoice, customer says, that's expensive per line. Yeah, 86 lines of code, 3 months of engineering time. Oh, but when you tell them, but it won't break. There's nothing that can break. There's nothing in it. It's so simple. What we did, they were using Windows at the time, and Windows already had telephony, phone over IP things. So they had codecs and stuff. So you could make a phone call from one Windows computer to the other, and this was all provided. And we just we just recorded the packets on the network. It's using RTP, an open protocol, to send the audio. Do an RTP recorder. That's super simple. I guess if we did it with the team that's here now, in 32 minutes we would have an RTP recorder. Open a socket, record the packets, and for the storage, I reuse the same idea as for the weather station things. Chronological folder structure, and then one audio file is 15 seconds. Rings a bell? You cannot lose more than 15 seconds by design. It checked all the boxes, but it took 3 months to get there. We tried with the larger systems. We were not happy. We said, no, that's not simple enough. No, it could break. Pieces could break. So make it simpler. And that's also another point that I want to make. You must not, give up and put the bar really high. And that worked really well in that example. Another example, more recent, I'm in my job, so I'm working for Adobe in Basel. We do a product called Adobe Experience Manager, basically a large-scale content management and websites infrastructure to do that. And I'm very interested in a web platform, keeping things simple, forget React and Vue and all this stuff, and keep it really vanilla JS and stuff. And one of my examples on the web platform Zoo, as I call it, is a commerce page, a shopping cart on the web. And when you come out of school or when you read too much about React, you will do, basic, what components do we need? Okay, there's images, we need an image component. There's a title, we need a title component. There's a slider, we need a slider component. And then you have 8 components. But if you look about it a bit deeper, you can make it simpler. Because nowadays, HTML and the web platform provide a lot of that. So you don't need to implement a lot of the things. You need one component for the slider because it has to be clever. And you need one component for the status bar. And I have one component that's invisible, but it's used for accessibility. So that, if you have a speech assistant system, it will speak things that make sense because they are in this hidden component. So again, it's simple. I went down from 8 components on the purely theoretical version to 5 components plus 1, which is the invisible one for accessibility. Again, simple, but not simplistic. Focusing on being very simple, but while fulfilling the job, and maybe a bit extra. Usually, good professional will go the extra mile. If you hire someone to do a job in your house, they do the kitchen, and then, I did this because I think it would be useful. An extra that you bring, and I think that's a good mentality to have. Oh, it's funny. HTTP 09. Who ever used HTTP 09? Probably the oldest guy in the room. This was the first version of the HTTP protocol. So simple. The client opens a socket to the server, sends one line, get the name of the file. The server replies with the HTML, and it's done. It's over. So simple. Okay, in the meantime, HTTP has evolved because we have more complex use cases and stuff. But this was so simple, and this prompted the explosion of the web. Because it was super simple to implement. On a Unix Linux system, you can implement this with 2 lines of script. And this has prompted the explosion of the web, really, because it was simple. So again, another example where simplicity makes a key difference. One example from my job, from the product that I'm working on, AM Edge Delivery Service, If you're familiar with AM, is anybody familiar with AM? One person who's too afraid to clap. AM is a large content management system. It's complicated. Developing for it is very complicated. I know I wrote the framework that sits underneath it. I'm guilty for that, partly. So we say, okay, let's do something radically simpler. To create a website, you edit documents in Google Docs or SharePoint, typical thing that everybody knows. Then we have some services in the meantime, and some code for rendering. Of course, you need to define the presentation of your website, and that's it. You do this, and you have a website that's by default very performant, fast, and everything. Again, a radically simpler view on content management for websites. And nowadays, we have a few hundred websites running on this from pretty large companies, including some relatively complex websites. Adobe.com runs on this in a large part. So, it's not just a toy. It's much simpler than what we had before, but you cannot do everything with it. There are still some good use cases where we need the more complex Adobe Experience Manager systems that we used to have and still have. So it's an expansion that you can use if it suits your needs, but you can ignore if you have more complicated needs. Again, simplicity has to be appropriate. So that's for the examples. And now how to do that? It's it's easy for me. Going back to 1999, I found 3 examples over my career, I'm very happy of the simplicity that we reached. So it doesn't happen often, and it's hard. But I think it's super important. For me, the key element is to put the simplicity front and center. Consider simplicity as important as performance, as security, as whatever abilities you want to put. I think it's super important. It's sometimes hard to convey to management. When the people who have to pay the developers, they say, you want to work 3 months and deliver me 3 pages of code? Are you serious? And you have to convince them, yes, I am serious, because you are going to use this code, or our customers are going to use this code for 20 years. So over 20 years, you will save money and effort and aggravation because the thing is good and simple. So it's really a very worthwhile investment, but it takes some convincing to convince people of that. For me, simplicity is a quest. I think the examples showed that. It's not, okay, do it simple, done. No, it's usually try to make it simple and not really succeed. Try it again, try it again, try it again, try it again. I was speaking of the framework that sits underneath Adobe Experience Manager. It's called Apache Sling. I've been quite active in the Apache Software Foundation as well. And especially in this project, which is yet another Java framework for web applications. But in this system, some modules, we rewrote them 5 times because we were not happy. We knew it was core software that's going to be used for a very long time by a large number of customers, serving millions of web requests. So it has to be right. And it's very rare that you get it right the first time. So try again, try again, try again. At some point you say, okay, this is simple. I can see it. I can explain it to you in 2 minutes. And that's when you reach your goal. So do not give up. Try again. Don't expect to get there immediately. And like everything we do in software, especially in DevOps, measure and evaluate. Define measurements of your simplicity. Quoting Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, seems that perfection is achieved not when there's nothing more to add, but when there is nothing more to take away. As geeks, we're often likely to add more features, and the product managers and the customers will tell us, add more features. Say, no, we don't do that. We want to remove things. I'm actually working on that on my product at the moment. I'm working on a system that allows us to turn off features over time so that we can remove them from the maintenance schedule. And one thing that I didn't mention is that I think simplicity is even more important at the systems level. If the architecture of your system is simple, if one of the modules is not simple, you can fix that. If the overall architecture is not simple, it's over. You're stuck. So really focus on the systems architecture. And you could very much include, if you have a definition of done, include in it is there anything left to remove? Ask the Saint-Exupéry question. I think it's super useful. Simplicity, as I said, is often beautiful and obvious. Think of the Lego bricks. It has to be simple, but not simplistic. That's very important. And it's a very difficult balance to find. It took me many years. And that's the coda. I think the simplicity is super important. Thanks to all of you who clapped at the beginning. It's hard. You won't, it's a big effort to do, and it's often more work to create something simpler. Brewing, it's time. And it's integrable. On the QR code, it's a page of my blog where you have the slides, and I'll put a link to the recording when they appear. Thank you very much.